Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Um, Thanks so much, Chris, for hopping on. I know that there's about, it's kind of weird. I'm looking at the screen, it's just me and you, but I know that there's
Yeah.
300 some people watching at Hack Western. So hello to everyone watching in the room over in the auditorium. Chris, we wish that you were here in person. I know that it couldn't be possible, but we're glad that we got you on anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
We have about half an hour, a little bit more than half an hour to talk. So I really want to talk about the variety of your experiences and use that kind of as a proxy to talk about what you think about tech, product, and then there's a couple other interesting kind of quirks that I'll get to. So we gave you a pretty good bio. Despite that, can you kind of give us a brief, 15-second, 30-second on who you are and what led you to here, and maybe anything interesting that's not on your resume that would be cool to know?
Yeah, sure. Hello, 300 ghosts that I cannot see, but I would love to be there. So a little bit about me. I'm currently the director of product on like buyer CRM for Realtor.com. So Realtor.com is the second largest real estate marketplace in the United States, with hundreds and millions of monthly active users looking to find their dream home. Before this, I was the global head of CRM for Pixel and Nest devices at Google. So if you've ever had a Pixel phone, a Nest thermostat, Nest Hub, whatever, and you activated your device and got an email, that's from me. Another thing to call out CRM, customer relationship marketing or customer relationship management. Really, it is basically saying after a user does the first critical action, like make an account, how do we follow up with that user and retain them and get them to know the magic of our product? That's basically what I do in my full-time job. Some quirks and things. I recognize I'm over 30 seconds already. I was an English major, minored in economics and Asian American studies, so a little different than a lot of folks. I'm a self-taught programmer. I have coded and sold some side projects and currently have some profitable ones. I am connected through Western. Like, I think that might be an interesting one. I think he's in the audience because I was literally DMing him on Twitter like 30 minutes ago. Justin was one of my first users on a product that I built called Coffee Chats, which was a way to provide mentorship during the pandemic. So I made my coffee chat site, chris.trycoffeechats.com. I posted it on LinkedIn, got a bunch of people. Justin saw it, took a shot. Alyssa, who might be in the audience as well, she was one of the other notable people that booked it, who is also a Western University student. And since then, I've just always been amazed by you all. You're incredibly bright students, building really awesome stuff and really trying to grow your career. So I'm always happy to help.
Cool. That's awesome to hear about Western. Justin, shout out. I know he's in the crowd. And I think that can go a lot for a lot more Western and Waterloo and 7 other schools that we have in the audience today from all across Canada. One of the things that you mentioned, which I think you brushed over pretty quickly, but like that sticks out to me a lot, especially in kind of a technical hackathon setting, is that you majored in English and kind of your coding experience came self-taught, self-driven after the fact. What was your initial fascination with majoring in English? And I know that like drew to some internship experiences and then slowly, evolved into your roles now.
Yeah.
How did that start? And then how did you end up switching into, I guess, the path that you took now?
So video games and comic books are probably 2 incredibly important pillars in my life. And so narrative was really interesting to me. One of my final papers at Davis as an English major was a video games and literature class where I like dissected God of War as like a notable piece of literature. And so I love stories, and I think that has been a really big part of my life. And when I was in college, I got an internship at Marvel Comics as an editorial intern at the X-Men office.
Very cool.
There's a cartoon, X-Men, the animated series that came out in the 90s, which was hugely important for me. It's my first memory with my dad. And so that was really great. But when I moved out to New York and I was like, I'm going to work in publishing, it's going to be great. If you all don't know, jobs in publishing pay terribly, and New York City is expensive. So those 2 things paid a lot of attention. So I ended up getting basically like final round at DC Comics, the home of Batman and Wonder Woman and Superman, and then an email marketing job at a consumer packaged goods startup called Soap.com. And I opted for the Soap.com one because, one, it was like an interesting job. Like I didn't know what email marketing was. I didn't know people bought things through emails. And then two, you know, circle of trust with 300 other people, but it also paid better. And so
Right.
I kind of opted for that. But through that, my life has really blossomed and changed, and it was one of the smartest decisions, and was able to make my way back to comics when I worked at 𝗪𝗁𝗨𝗪, leading retention marketing and acquisition marketing. For those that don't know, 𝗪𝗁𝗨𝗪 is an app that lets you read comics on your Apple and Android device. That was acquired by Amazon, and because of that acquisition, actually, I was able to buy my first condo, which then got me this house, which introduced me to real estate. And so life is a weird, winding journey. But I'd say, like, yeah, that was the journey of the love of English, and then making my way over to marketing and PM and all that stuff.
And you can only connect the dots looking backwards, sort of, I guess, which is
Absolutely.
now easy for you to say.
Yeah, it looks like it's like insane. Like I'm also a big poker player. And the other thing that we talk about in poker a lot is, like, you just make the best decision you can in the moment, right? Like, you don't know what the other cards will be, but just make the best decision you can. And I think that was very much it, is like this North Star of mine at the time was like, where can I go and learn the most, right? And so as long as for me, following that led to all these things, which, as you said, you look back and the dots make sense, but in the moment you're like, why am I moving from a company that sells shampoo to a company that sells pants to a company that sells comics? Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I know that early on, the PM in you started to show itself in some of the metrics that you used to try and get those jobs early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was interesting. When I graduated, you have a standard 0 to 1 problem, actually, which I think many of you might be dealing with right now in your careers, is like, I have no jobs, I need my first job. It's like the most common, like, had that 0 to 1
0 to
problem.
1.
And when I was in New York and I had, like, my bank account was drying up, I figured out, like, some Gmail hacks just through, like, reading. So, like, if you're not familiar, like, 𝗪𝗏𝗏 plus whatever at gmail.com will go to 𝗪𝗏's email, and similarly 𝗪𝗏 plus water bottle, right, at gmail.com also goes to his inbox. And so figuring that out, I was like, oh, okay, I'll just make like 4 different resumes and use them all on the same job, but with different email addresses, and see which one gets a response back. And that was actually my first introduction to A/B testing. I didn't know what A/B testing was at the time, but this idea of, like, I don't know what people want, and so let me figure out what is the resume that converts. And surprisingly, it's, for those, if you're curious, it is the boring 1 page, 1 column, like, text Arial email. And the reason is because resume tracking systems and automated responders, like, it's easier to parse the text, right? So the most common mistake that I see from a lot of new graduates is they spend so much time on these beautiful, like, Figma or InDesign resumes, and it's like, that's actually worse. Like, I'm recognizing we have a lot to talk about, but I'll tell you one thing anecdotally. I'm at Google. I have a phenomenal team. One of them is a temp who rolls off, right? So her contract ends, but we have an open full-time employee role, and we literally sent her resume to the recruiter at Google and said, this is the resume we want to interview, because we knew she was going to apply, so we wanted them to flag it, and then we can interview her for the full-time employee job. We never hear about her application, but we get all these other people. And so it's like 2 weeks go by, and we're like, why didn't she get brought up? And they go, oh, I guess it got rejected by the automated system. And so it's like, the human knew exactly what resume to look for. The intermediary robot failed because it was a beautifully designed resume. So again, if I can give you takeaways in 14 minutes in, please just make a simple 1 column text resume. You will do far better.
Cool. Those are some great tips and hacks.
Yeah.
So you spent some time, like you said earlier, at soap.com, which later got bought out by Amazon, a 𝗪𝗏𝗀 company, kind of a holdings company, a variety of kind of the early D2C wave. And then you were at Bonobos, which later got sold to Walmart, before leaving to start some early stage companies, Imager, and as well as some other kind of failure stories as well. I know that's in there before you ended up at Google and then Realtor.com. What did you find distinct about your experiences succeeding and failing in early stage versus large stage companies?
Yeah. So it's a big question for sure. Succeeding in early stage companies comes down to shipping really fast. Like, especially when you're a venture-backed company, and you're trying to find product market fit, ship fast, ship often, talk with your customers, don't make assumptions. There's a phrase I like to use a lot, which is like all my babies are ugly. I use it to level set like everybody in the room that like we need to, nothing is precious, right? Like we should be able to question assumptions about anything, because it's so easy to, especially for those of you that are about to hack something, you might get really far along, but not actually ship because you want it to be perfect. Your babies are ugly. Like you have no users. Like just ship the thing and start getting customer feedback. And that's really important. I think success at a big company, especially like a Google, comes down to relationships and influencing. So like at a Google, you are so dependent on your peers and your coworkers and your pod, like whatever you want to call it, to actually do anything. And so being able to build those relationships and build trust, know how to talk with people and tell the right story to get them on board with your idea. I would say I was successful at Google and was able to get promoted at Google simply because like I could get people in the room to understand what I want to do and get them bought in so that we did the thing. A lot of people at Google are very brilliant, but if they can't get the right person on board, they're blocked. And if you're blocked at Google, you're just not going to do anything. So failures, I think at a small company, to put it frankly, it's probably like hubris and like not recognizing you don't have product market fit. Like if you, it's so easy again to say like this product is precious, it has to be great, or like it's been good for the first 5,000 users, obviously great for the next 50,000 users, and it's like that's not the case at all. And so like again, it goes back to like understand your customers, talk with them, ship fast, ship often, be excellent. Failure at like a big company, I guess yeah, it goes back to like if you build those relationships poorly, right? Yeah, not having their support and not knowing like the people, like you're gonna have a bad time.
Cool. Thanks for breaking apart the compound question into all the permutations. Sorry about that.
I thought it was like a matrix. I was like, okay.
It was, yes. There's something that there's something around working at early stage and late stage around kind of the skills you gain, and I guess it's best illustrated if you take kind of your T of knowledge, just like the letter T, and you say at early stage you kind of deepen your T, or sorry, you widen your T.
Yeah, for sure.
Across I guess a lesser sort of depth, relatively speaking. And then a larger stage company, your breadth is very narrow. You're kind of focused on something. And your depth is much higher. How do you, in any given environment, how do you get more of the other? If that makes sense. So if I'm in a large stage company, how do I get more breadth? If I'm in an early stage company, how do I get more depth?
Yeah. It's a good question. And I'm like, this is the N of one, right? Like just my own
experience. Yeah, of course.
So at the early stage company, that's also like really broad in that like early could be like you and 2 other people, and early could still be like 100 employees. Like that's still pretty early, right? Series A is still pretty early. I would say though that in the beginning, like you have to have breadth. Like, especially those of you like that are about to like hack some stuff together, like your engineer is probably also a UX designer. Like your PM is probably like your marketing person. And like if you actually build a company, like your ops person is your PM, is your CEO, right? And so in order to get more depth, you have to like do well at the breadth, right? Like you need to get to product market fit so that then you can say, hey, I would like to double down on just PM work. I would like to double down on just iOS dev. I don't want to be all of the devs anymore, right? So it's like, get the breadth right so that you can pick the depth you want to go down. On the big company side, that's actually largely dependent on the company itself. So like at Google was great about like, if you want to try lots of stuff, go for it. Like you want to do a 20% project and learn program management, great. Like, are you interested in like teaching? Like google.org has some fun stuff that you can do. Like Google was really encouraging about that like when you join, like the assumption is like you're an excellent marketer regardless, but then you can also bounce around to other stuff. I'd say like my experience at Amazon was less that. Like Amazon was more like it's a very vertically structured company. And so you're hired as like you are a subject matter expert on iOS app. Like just make the iOS app better. And I think you'd have to meet. In my experience, it was more like formally, like I want to move over to this thing versus
Yeah.
I just want to try over. Like Google has like a phrase called like a bungee or like a 20% project. I didn't necessarily find that true at Amazon, but that could be different.
Interesting. Yeah, this kind of it's focused depending on the org.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I want to shift it a little bit. There's a pretty distinct shift from marketing to product in your background, or I guess email marketing to product. Can you talk about it was a pretty organic kind of move in your head. Can you talk about the reasoning behind that shift and kind of what drove you to actually do that?
Yeah. So first three companies I was at, Soap, Bonobos, 𝗪𝗁𝗏 was very marketing specific. But at 𝗪𝗁𝗏 even, I started to understand that like I couldn't market my way out of like subpar product. Like you had to make the product better to do some of the things that I felt like we should do. And then when I got to Imgur, which was at the time 55-person Series A startup. For those not familiar, Imgur, IMGUR, is an image host and image sharing community. It was Reddit's like big image sharing community until Reddit launched their own image uploader. And my job was to grow the community, like grow users, specifically like app users, because that's where the business was headed.
Yeah.
And so through things like push notifications and emails, I was like, okay, like that's retention stuff. But like if I don't have users and account registrations and app downloads, I have a smaller audience. And so I started investigating and looking into like more like full funnel. Like much of my career was like, I have an email audience, talk to these people. I started looking up higher and higher up the funnel. And so then once I started doing that, I was like, oh, there like needs to be product changes in order for me to do my job well. And that's when I really started being more interested in like product management. And then some of the engineers there, one of them in particular, asked me like, hey, what side projects are you working on a walk to lunch? And like, again, English major, marketing guy, I didn't even know that side projects were a thing. And he was like, oh, I'm building like a game using like Go, like programming language in my free time. And I didn't even know what Go was and all that stuff. And so through that conversation, though, I got really interested. And so then that's when I learned Ruby on Rails, which is like the language he recommended that I learn.
Yeah.
Building Ruby on Rails, I started building my side projects. We built some side projects together that we sold. And then through my own life and my side projects, I was like, oh, like I enjoy building this stuff. And I think I'm pretty okay at it. And so at Google, I got more interested in it as well. And then the opportunity at Realtor came up where it was like, I can kind of merge these two sides of me, this like marketing CRM side and product management side into like manifesting like a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I can focus on it full-time. Yeah.
Cool. You were at soap.com and then you were at Bonobos, both led by pretty interesting, influential and kind of powerful leaders, Mark Lowry and then Andy Dunn at Bonobos. What about them was so special?
Yeah. It goes back to the question you asked of like what drove you to like being an English major.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal tellers. Like I remember vividly being in a meeting like 2 or 3 months in, like it was all hands at Bonobos. For those not familiar, Bonobos sells pants, shirts, and suits to men. Not game-changing stuff. But I remember being in those meetings.
And soap.com was soap.
Soap was soap and toilet paper. And I remember being in those rooms, in those all hands, and afterward, we would just leave and be like, we're going to change the world by selling these pants. Like we are going to literally change the world. And it was this thing where like I've worked with other CEOs since then. And I think the commonality from the most successful ones, like Mark and Andy that you see out there, they can just tell some amazing stories. Like and part of what I mean by storytelling is not the like Jack and Jill went up the hill. It's like, I'm building an e-commerce solution that will fundamentally change the world, that will take on Amazon, right? For those also not familiar, Mark Lowry built 𝗪𝗁𝗏, sold it for, I think, 550 million, and then made Jet.com, which was like his second run at taking on Amazon. And that was acquired by Walmart for $3 billion. A man does not do that by accident. Like there's a reason why. And like, again, e-commerce, there's Amazon, right? Like why would people write checks to this person for another e-commerce business? And I can tell you like, if you listen to Mark on podcasts or interviews or whatever, you can see that he is a phenomenal storyteller. And Swart, we were talking ahead of time. it sounds like you all might have some pitches at the end of all this hackathon. And what I would impress upon you all is that like get that pitch really, really tight. Like if you have time during these hackathons, like go listen to some of the early pitches from like Mark and Andy on their companies so you can see how they do it. Like how you sell this idea is usually more important than the product itself.
Gotcha. Cool. Very cool. I want to shift a little bit to audience questions. We've been asking in our Slack channel for the hackathon if there are any pressing questions that folks wanted to hear your thoughts on. And there are a couple, especially ones that have hit one strand of one line of questioning. Jennifer, Luke, Nicholas, a couple others ask kind of a combination of for you, what was kind of your initial struggle becoming a product manager? And then part two is any advice to current folks trying to become PMs, especially given the current kind of recession and sort of the economic climate, tech layoffs and stuff like that?
Yep. So struggle wasn't technical enough. So if you're already a CS major, you were far ahead of me. But really it's like you need to be able to understand like what the people in your pod, like your agile pod or like your team is going through and working on, right? And so if you can't read SQL, you're going to have a bad time. If you can't like, so like I'm a Ruby on Rails engineer, right? And then I also know HTML quite well. Like if you can't understand that like URL encoding is causing an issue here, like you're going to have a bad time, because then you are a PM that raises problems. You're not providing solutions. And I would say that's one of the, you asked earlier, like, how do you find success in a big company? That's another one for sure. In all companies, really. Don't raise problems, raise solutions. And helpful structure there is context. This is the thing that I'm seeing. This is the issue or context is this thing I wanted to do. The bug, this is the thing that I'm seeing. This is what I would like to happen. Here's some potential paths on what I think is happening. But the other thing too is like that humanity and empathy bit of like, don't also be so arrogant that you're like, my answer is right. It's more like, here are some strands that I think we could go down that maybe we can look at together, right? I find that is a helpful path forward.
Gotcha.
Your other question though was like the recession, right?
Yeah.
And like, how do you break in right now? The single most important thing about being a PM is you need proof that you've product managed something. Like you will see on the Google careers, like entry level. So there's the APM, associate product manager job, and there's product manager, right? And you will see that in those product manager descriptions, they often have things like previous experience, PM experience, or is a founder. Like, and the reason why is because if you are a founder and you've built something and you shipped something and you've gotten customers and you've made money, that tells a lot more about your ability to be a successful PM because you understand the thing end to end, right? You've written code because clearly you had to, right, do that. And then two, you talk with customers, you understand UX, you shipped, if you have paying customers, it means you probably have talked with your customers, right? And so I would say like for you all, school is important. Do well in school, but like do things like hackathons to make products and then go ship them. Justin, I'm always going to pick on you because like I love you, dude. He made something really cool like that he shipped like 3 days ago, and I DM'd him and I was like, now go make other people do the exact same thing you just launched, right? Like if he can go do that and get customers and then go put that on his resume, hey, I got 500 customers building this thing. I launched it on Product Hunt. Like I did all of this stuff. That tells a hiring manager far more about his ability to succeed than like, I'm a CS graduate with a 4.0.
Gotcha. Yeah. Very cool. I want to shift a little bit. This is a fun one from Luke. What superhero would be the best PM and why?
Batman, probably. I Batman because
and not because you worked at DC.
Correct. Batman product manages his Justice League on like a daily basis, right? Like he has to deal with all of that, and so that's probably the guy I'm picking.
Gotcha. Cool. Are there any hot takes from your time at big tech companies? What did you find that was like surprising to you or like kind of the most unexpected?
So this is again, so a couple things to call out. I'm not here as a representative of Realtor.com, Move Inc.,
of course.
News Corp. I'm not here as a representative of Google. These are all my own opinions. I guess the take that I would actually put out there is I'm fortunate and glad that my story started with startups versus going into like big tech like Google.
Yeah.
And the reason why is I enjoyed getting that breadth of knowledge. But the other thing too is I don't think I would have appreciated how great Google was if I had been there right away. For example, I remember at orientation talking with someone who had interned at Google and then converted to a full-time employee. So he was like 21, straight from college.
Yeah.
And we're like in an auditorium with like 1,500 other people. And like, it's known Google benefits are great. Like onboarding at Google was like, here's a donut wall and here's a bunch of like amazing Indian food and like here's free alcohol. And did you know that like you get massage points like when you work here and like
bikes around campus
and bikes around campus and like amazing benefits. And the vibe that I got from him was like, it's cool. And I was like, no, dude, like this is not how it is. Like when you're at like a seed stage startup, like the startup I was at before Google, my job included sending the emails, QAing the devices, and filling up toilet paper and paper towels in the bathroom, right? Like things are different. And I think it was good that I had the humbling of like a smaller company, so that when I got to Google, I could realize like, hey, this is truly a phenomenal place to work.
Gotcha. Nicholas asks, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the tech field from when you started? So sort of similar to the question, but a little different between when you started and now.
Yeah, that's a really good question. My mind goes to actually like ecom in particular. Bonobos and Soap had like engineers making like the ecom site, and now like shout out to like a Canadian company, but like Tobias and the Shopify team have like fundamentally changed how we view ecom.
Yeah.
Like anyone can make like an amazing ecom store and launch their own DTC business. Like Kylie Jenner has a DTC business that's worth billions of dollars on the Shopify tech stack. So like the idea that like things like that, things like Stripe, things like Linktree, Instagram, whatever, there's just so many ways for you to like launch a product as like a non-coder. And even if you are a coder, it's like the ability for me to charge with my side projects is thanks to Stripe, right? Because I don't want to handle all that stuff. And so I would say like it's so much easier to ship a successful product that like, again, it goes back to like how to be a successful PM and like break through the noise, ship a product. It's so much easier now. So please just go do it.
Gotcha. So everyone in the audience is going to be hacking over the next little bit, over the next roughly 48 hours, 36 hours. You obviously mentioned a lot about storytelling. I'm going to go on a limb and say you being someone who had majored in what you did in English, and then slowly learned and now care a lot about storytelling and product. What do you get? What do you understand that technical folks around you've kind of noticed have a harder time to understand about storytelling or in general, or maybe kind of building product, kind of from what's so unique about your perspective?
Yeah. I don't think I'm like particularly unique because like I'm just a random guy. Thank you for the time, but like I'm just a dude. But I would say one common thing is like all my babies are ugly. I think that's like and I say that because like in the writing world, like your thing is going to get edited like crazy, right? The movie or that you watched off the screenplay that was written by like 5,000 people, right? And like a bunch of producers or whatever, right? And so being comfortable with like, hey, this is ugly, like we'll need to make improvements, and like the customer is right. I think that is one. I think the other one is like if you build, like there's that quote from Field of Dreams, a very old baseball movie, that's if you build it, they will come. I think it's very important to know in product, if you build it, nobody comes. Like distribution is really important. Like you have to go out there and actually talk with people. And like some of my amazing friends who are like better engineers than I, who have built products, they don't have the same stories that I do of like building profitable business and selling them, because it's like I built a great product, but I have no users. How come I don't have users? And I go, have you gone out there and actually talked with users to go get those users? And they're like, no. I watched it on Reddit like one time. And it's like, well, what is your Reddit thing? And it's like, it's just a link to the product. It doesn't tell us anything about why you built it, your mission, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's really important. Sorry. And like my mind really does go to a place of like, you all are about to spend a weekend building products together. If if you launch a product or pitch a product today or over this weekend and it just dies after 3 days, like that's a shame. Like I strongly advise a lot of you to think through like, okay, I built the thing. Let's go get one user.
Yeah.
Then let's go get one paying user. Then let's go get 10. Like you have this opportunity right now where like there's loans, there's debt, there's all that kind of stuff. Like you have this amazing opportunity where like you're not out of college trying to find a job like I was. Like go use this time to go make a product that like can start funding some of that stuff. Like imagine if you all if one of you can make a project that makes $1,000 in monthly recurring revenue, then you don't have to be worried as much about finding that first job, right?
Right.
Like that could be a huge milestone, right? So
and this weekend already brings you so much closer to that. Kind of the largest of the hurdles is already kind of tackled through being around cool people and just hacking.
Right. Yeah, like that's one thing I miss so much about college, and I think that's probably my biggest bummer about being in the English side was like now I'm like, oh man, if I could go back with the Ruby and Rails knowledge that I have, like the ability to make all this, things would be very different. But I can't go back and do it. So instead I plant the seed in all of you of like, go make some, 1K MRR products and like go change the world.
For sure.
Yeah.
Henry asks, what tips do you have to become a better storyteller? Maybe not necessarily in the context of making a pitch at a hackathon, but just inherently as a person.
Yeah. Think about your reader or your audience. I think that's actually a really important one. And it applies in PM world, but in this case, like I'll just limit it to the storytelling bit. It's like I spend a lot of time when I get to know somebody to actively listen to like what they're actually telling me. Like I think I was talking with Dennis and I can't remember
Kelly.
Kelly. But like I want to know about them as people. Like I want to know that Dennis is a second year. I want to know that Kelly is a fourth year. I want to know that they like things. It's obfuscated right now, but like I have like toys and statues of superheroes in this shelf and then original art right here. And I like to have those things because I like to see what people pick out because then it tells me a little bit more about them. And if I can understand that like, oh, like, for example, one of my coworkers is a mother of 2 kids, then I can talk to them about school. I can talk to them about, hey, I'm a new dad. Do you have advice for me? I can play off of some of these things that I'm starting to know about them so that then when I need to tell them a story or I need to influence them in some way, I have insight into like the things they care about. That's actually another bit too. I took a class at Google that was really good. It's called Influencing Through Storytelling. The single most important thing they try to impart in you is that our brains make decisions off of the soft stuff, right? Like we think intuitively, and especially you all as technical folks, that like quantitative stuff is what matters, metrics, benchmarks, all that kind of stuff. The vast majority of the decisions we actually make are emotional. If you're not familiar, there is the Snickers ad that I really like, which is like, you're not you when you're hungry.
Yeah.
The
angry football coach.
Right. There's a reason why Snickers doesn't go to market with like, hey, we're a 200-calorie chocolate bar. We have nuts in it. We have more protein than the other guy, right? That's not actually what people care about. Also in a really crowded space, they go with a story, and the story is like, you're not you when you're hungry. And that like really hits home,
cares
right?
with people.
So yeah, exactly, right? And so I would say for you all, like, think about that. Like if you're going to pitch or if you're going to talk with somebody or you're trying to tell a story or whatever, it's like, what is an emotional note that they can resonate with, right? And I would say the other thing too then, be comfortable being vulnerable. Because in order for me to get that information out of people, I often will share things about myself that puts me in a vulnerable place. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It is a tool that I think should be used more often. So that one, we can connect with each other, but then 2, you can also learn more about the people that you're hanging out with.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that piece of advice on storytelling. I guess applying to a large part of our day-to-day rather than just a hackathon.
Yeah, for sure.
My next question is my last question, and I wanted to ask it. If you had to answer just in a few sentences. So I want to keep it very succinct because I want to filter out kind of the first thing that comes to your head and kind of the most honest answer. You have a young child. a year and a half old.
Yep.
You're building and selling products on the side. You mentor students and you care about that. You do that at volume. And now you lead product at realtor.com. After your last job at Google. That's a lot. It's a lot to handle. What keeps you motivated?
Yeah. In the upfront, I said my North Star at the time was like, go where you can learn the most. I think now my North Star has evolved into just help people.
Yeah.
2 words. It's very simple. But like, we only have so much time on this earth. And so if you can help one more person, 0 to 1, you've already changed one life, right? And then if you start to enjoy that and you start to hunger for it, then you help 10 people and 1,000 people. And it is fun and it is good. And like, it's awesome when like people that I've helped through coffee chats or whatever come back and say like, hey, I used your advice and like now I'm making like 180,000. Like, and I was only making like 90,000 like a year before. And it's like, you change someone's life. Like that feels good. And so that just help people.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much, Chris. I know we do want to show you what the crowd looks like and kind of our appreciation for the crowd, or from the crowd for you coming on. Kelly, do you want to chime in and then help out?
Yep, I can do that. Just one moment.
Cool.
All right, so we're gonna try to make this work. I'm gonna turn around my laptop so Chris can I'll see you. All right.
Hey, Kelly.
Hello, Chris. And then here is, oh, okay, let's give us one more try.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Just give it a minute. Okay, so here is everyone in the audience today.
That's amazing. Hey, everyone. Yeah, maybe next year I can fly out.
We'd love that. That'd be awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Chris, for your time. I know everyone's going to had an awesome time listening to you, and we'll kind of take your words of wisdom from kind of your unique perspective around storytelling to heart.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
The last thing I'll say.
Yeah.
Please add me on LinkedIn. It's just Christopher Tung. And then there's a high correlation with people who put themselves out there and like book a coffee chat with me and then like having good outcomes in their careers. And so what I would push you all is like, even if it's like a little weird, it's like be comfortable being uncomfortable, put yourself out there, book time with me if you can find a slot, or DM me or whatever. More often than not, people are going to say, yeah, how can I help? So again, help people and be comfortable being uncomfortable. That's what I'd say.
You don't get what you asked for.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Chris.
Bye.
All right,
off to you, Kelly.
Give a big round of applause to Chris.
He left, but I'll let him know that there was a cheer for him afterwards.
Yeah. And we'll drop links to Chris's LinkedIn, etc. In the channel shortly.